So picture this. You are looking at a sweltering afternoon, middle of July, 1862. And there are these three teenagers,
Right.
David, Tonelli, and Panico. And they decide they have just had absolutely enough of their afternoon church services.
Which, typical teenagers.
Exactly. And their headmaster is miles away on this spiritual retreat. So they figure, hey, we can sneak off, go swimming in a canal near the Dora-Riparia River. And they totally think they've pulled off the perfect escape.
Until they haven't.
Right, until the headmaster actually returns, calls them out by name, and tells them he watched the entire thing happen.
Which is just a terrifying prospect if you are a 19th century teenager. I mean, he didn't just catch them after the fact.
No.
He claimed to have experienced a literal supernatural vision of them in real time. He told his students, flat out, that he possessed this ability to observe their conduct from afar, and specifically to monitor the state of their souls.
Which is wild.
It is. And the way he explained this ability to those boys is, well, it's what makes this moment so crucial to understanding who this guy really was.
He called it his telegraph.
Yes.
So welcome to today's deep dive. Today we are looking at, honestly, one of the most paradoxical figures of the 19th century, Don Bosco.
Absolutely.
And to really understand how this man operated, we're doing something a bit unusual for you today. We aren't just walking through a standard cradle-to-grave biography.
No, that would be too simple.
Right. Instead, we are taking a single date on the calendar, July 20th, and we are looking at the surviving source material from that exact day across 4 different years.
So that's 1862, 1868, 1876, and 1884.
Exactly. And our mission here is to figure out how he balanced these completely contradictory roles. Because he was a mystic with supernatural vision powers, but also a pragmatic CEO managing daily admin tasks, and a crisis leader during a public health disaster.
It's just a brilliant way to slice through the historical record, honestly. Because when you look at historical figures who achieved massive social impact, there is this tendency to, smooth out their edges.
Oh, totally. We turn them into these flat archetypes.
Right, like the mystical saint or the brilliant CEO or the frontline humanitarian. But by cutting a core sample through these 4 specific July 20th, we get to see that Don Bosco was actually all of these things simultaneously.
Yeah.
And the friction between those roles is where his actual genius lived.
So let's stay in 1862 for a minute with those 3 teenagers in the canal. When I first read that he used the word telegraph to describe his supernatural visions, I actually laughed out loud.
It's pretty funny, yeah.
It's just such a specific, almost jarring word choice for a priest to use regarding a mystical experience,
Well, it really reveals a profound understanding of communication on his part. I mean, in 1862, the telegraph is the absolute bleeding edge of technology.
It's like the internet of its era.
Exactly. For the first time in human history, information is traveling instantly across these invisible lines. So by using that specific word, he is taking the super abstract theological concept, spiritual omnipresence, and grounding it in the most modern, tangible metaphor available to a teenager at the time.
It really reminds me of the way we use technology to explain abstract concepts today. Like when you compare human memory to a hard drive.
Right, or saying someone is processing information like a CPU.
Yeah. He's essentially telling these kids, you are connected to my network.
Yeah.
But I do wonder about the psychological impact of that on you as a student. If your headmaster essentially tells you he has a spiritual surveillance system, doesn't that just create a culture of paranoia?
Well, that is the tightrope he was walking, for sure. But if you look at the broader context of 19th century Turin, swimming in those canals wasn't just a minor rule violation, it was incredibly dangerous.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the currents were treacherous, and industrialization was rapidly changing the waterways, and most of these kids who came from severe poverty, they had no idea how to swim.
Ah, gotcha.
So the mortality rate for youths in these situations was incredibly grim. So his telegraph was certainly a tool for behavioral control, but the sources emphasized that the boys understood it was rooted in preservation.
Like a safety thing.
Exactly. He was watching them because he was terrified for both their physical safety and their spiritual development.
A sort of invisible safety net. But, I mean, a reputation like that, a man who claims he can see across miles, whose supernatural insight protects his students, that doesn't just stay contained to a single school. People talk.
They absolutely do. And that brings us to the logistical nightmare of becoming a living legend.
Which we see perfectly crystallized 6 years later. So our second July 20th is in 1868. At this point, Don Bosco has just consecrated a massive new project, the Church of Mary, help of Christians.
Right.
And the scale of his operation has transformed completely.
And we really have to define what this operation actually was for you to understand the scale, because he ran what was called an oratory.
Right.
And in Don Bosco's context, this wasn't just a chapel. It was a sprawling youth center, a school, a trade workshop, and a home for boys who had been orphaned or abandoned in the streets of Turin.
A massive social safety net, basically.
Exactly. And by 1868, the sheer volume of people relying on him was staggering.
The source material here actually comes from Father Rua, and he was Don Bosco's closest collaborator, essentially his chief operating officer.
Yeah, his right-hand man.
Right. And Rua records that on this day, the crowds flocking to the new shrine were just massive. But what caught my eye wasn't the foot traffic. It was the mailroom.
Oh, the letters.
Yes. Letters were arriving daily at the oratory from people thanking the Virgin Mary for favors they believed were granted specifically through Don Bosco's prayers.
The physical infrastructure of his life was basically bending under the weight of his spiritual reputation. And this is where the archetype of the mystic usually falls apart, right?
How so?
Well, historically, when someone achieves that level of veneration, they retreat. They go to a monastery, they take vows of silence, and they just let administrators handle the crowds.
Right, they become a figurehead. You don't expect the visionary on the mountaintop to come down and, balance the accounting ledgers.
Exactly. But Don Bosco refused to separate the mystical from the mundane. To him, the spiritual power he yielded was only valuable if it fueled the physical reality of his oratory.
So the letters weren't just fan mail?
No, not at all. The letters arriving were the lifeblood of his organization. They brought donations, influence, and the social capital required to feed and house hundreds of destitute children.
See, I have a hard time wrapping my head around how someone shifts gears between those two realities on a daily basis.
It's a lot.
It is, which makes our third source document from July 20, 1876 so fascinating.
Yeah.
So we are jumping ahead another 8 years.
Right.
He is staying at a school in Alassio on the Italian coast, and he sits down to write a letter back to Father Rua in Turin.
And this letter is an absolute masterpiece of administrative micromanagement.
It really, really is. I mean, remember, this is a man who is revered as a miracle worker by thousands. And what is he writing about? Yes, pamphlets. He is giving these strict, non-negotiable instructions to expedite the printing of a prospectus, essentially a marketing brochure, for a new school he's opening at Varaz. And he doesn't just ask for them to be printed, he demands exactly 300 copies, with explicit instructions on their distribution.
He is basically acting as his own print shop manager. But you have to remember, the Salesian Order, the religious and educational organization he founded, was expanding rapidly. He understood that you don't scale an educational empire purely on good vibes and prayer.
Yeah, definitely not.
You need high-quality promotional materials to convince local municipalities and wealthy donors to support your schools.
Okay, I want to push back on this a little bit, though.
Sure, go ahead.
I struggle to reconcile this level of, extreme micromanagement with his core belief system. If he genuinely believes he has a direct line to the divine, if he's having these telegraph visions and receiving daily letters of miraculous intervention, why is he sweating over a print run of exactly 300 pamphlets?
That's a fair question.
Right. Shouldn't a guy with his spiritual resume just trust that the right students and donors will show up?
Well, that is a fundamental misunderstanding of his theology, but I will say it's a very common one. Don Bosco operated on this strict principle that grace builds upon nature.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
It means he believed the divine might provide the opportunity, but human sweat had to build the infrastructure. If he wanted a new school to save boys from the streets, he couldn't just pray for it to open.
He had to do the work.
Exactly. He had to secure the building, hire the teachers, and yes, manage the marketing materials. For him, formatting a pamphlet was literally a spiritual act.
Because the pamphlet gets the donors.
Because the pamphlet builds the school, and the school saves the child.
Okay, that makes sense. But it still feels incredibly granular when you look at the second half of that exact same letter.
Oh, this is the best part.
In the very same breath where he is agonizing over the 300 pamphlets, he casually drops one of the most massive pieces of news in the history of his organization.
The Patagonia expansion.
Yes. He just drops in that 2 tribal chieftains in Patagonia, all the way down in South America, have requested that Salesian missionaries be sent to their people.
It's incredible.
And he is putting Father Cagliero, another key lieutenant, in charge of the expedition.
You really have to think about the scale of global operations in the 1870s here. This isn't setting up a satellite office in a neighboring city.
No, not at all.
This is orchestrating an expedition across an ocean to a largely unmapped region of South America, and they're communicating via letters that take months to arrive. He's negotiating with indigenous leaders on another continent.
It's the ultimate juxtaposition. He is the visionary architect laying out a blueprint for a global empire, and simultaneously he is the bricklayer obsessed with the exact placement of mortar on a single wall in Italy.
Right. And most leaders choose one or the other. They are either the big picture ideas person or they are the operations manager.
Yeah, the tragedy of modern leadership is that we usually separate those functions completely.
Totally. The CEO doesn't know how the factory floor operates, and the factory manager has no say in global strategy.
Exactly. But Don Bosco's insistence on managing both the Patagonian expedition and the Varaz pamphlets proves he never lost touch with the micromechanics of his own mission. He knew that the grand vision would just completely collapse if the daily administration wasn't flawless.
And it is relatively easy to maintain that kind of flawless administration when the environment is stable. You can balance the pamphlets and the global expansion when the postal service works, the trains are running, and society is generally functioning.
But what happens to a hyper-organized system when the world outside your walls completely collapses?
That is the ultimate stress test for any leader. How do you operate when the infrastructure you rely on ceases to exist?
Which brings us to our final core sample, July 20, 1884. So another 8 years have passed. And the context of this date is incredibly grim for you to imagine. Turin and much of Italy is being devastated by a massive cholera epidemic.
Cholera in the 19th century was, well, it was a terrifying reality. We are talking about a waterborne disease that could kill a healthy adult in a matter of hours.
Wow, just hours.
Right, through severe dehydration. And there was no modern medical consensus on how to treat it, no IV fluids, nothing like that. And the public panic was absolute.
I can only imagine.
The wealthy fled the cities for the countryside, local governments were entirely overwhelmed, and the streets essentially became death traps.
So we have a letter from Don Bosco on this exact day, writing from Turin to Count Call. Now, Count Call was this prominent French benefactor who generously funded both the local schools and those massive expeditions to Patagonia we just talked about.
Yeah, a major backer.
And Don Bosco's letter to him is remarkably candid. He uses the phrase topsy-turvy to describe his houses.
Which is such a polite 19th century euphemism for total societal breakdown.
Very polite.
But the oratory, which usually hummed with the precision of a Swiss watch, with the printing presses, the classrooms, the trade shops, it had completely ground to a halt. The administrative framework he spent decades building was suddenly useless against an invisible pathogen.
This is where we see his leadership pivot in a way that feels very instructive for modern crisis management.
Absolutely.
Because when a crisis of this magnitude hits, the first instinct of any administrator is triage. How do we minimize casualties and protect the institution? So Don Bosco's immediate move was to thin out the population.
Right.
Any boys in the oratory who had surviving families in the countryside or in safer zones were immediately sent home.
And honestly, it was the only scientifically and administratively sound decision he could make. An oratory packed with hundreds of youths sharing sleeping quarters and dining halls. It's a tinderbox for a waterborne plague.
A total disaster waiting to happen.
Exactly. By sending the boys with families away, he was executing his duty as the pragmatic CEO. He was actively breaking the chain of transmission.
But, and this is the crucial distinction here, he didn't just empty the building and retreat to safety himself. While he sent the boys with families away, he explicitly chose to remain at the oratory in the heart of plague-ridden Turin.
He stayed for the orphans, the boys who had literally nowhere else to go.
How does an operation like that even function? The city's completely shut down, supply chains for food are likely disrupted, the threat of disease is constantly lingering at the door. I mean, how does one man and a skeleton crew of priests keep a massive youth shelter alive during a plague?
It required a complete synthesis of the two personas we've been tracking today. The manager had to enforce rigorous hygiene protocols, secure clean water, and ration food when donations dried up. But the mystic, the spiritual father, had an even harder job.
Keeping morale up.
More than that, he had to keep these boys from succumbing to sheer terror.
The psychological toll must have been unimaginable.
Exactly. These were children who had already lost their parents, which is why they were at the oratory in the first place. Now the world around them was dying, their friends had been sent away, and they were trapped.
Heartbreaking.
If Don Bosco had managed them from afar, if he had retreated to some villa and just sent letters of instruction, the despair would have broken them. He understood that in a crisis of this magnitude, logistical management is not enough. You have to provide physical, visible solidarity.
He couldn't just use his telegraph to check in on their souls. He had to be standing right next to them in the dark.
It completely flips the script on how we view leadership during a catastrophe. Often the higher up you are in an organization, the further insulated you are from the frontline damage.
Yeah, that's so true today.
But Don Bosco used his administrative authority to clear the building of anyone who had a safe harbor, specifically so he could physically stand on the front line with the few who didn't.
It is a stunning portrait of responsibility. And when you pull back and look at the entire arc we've traced across these 4 July 20ths, you really see the full architecture of his life.
It's a remarkable progression, it really is.
Just to sum it up for you, in 1862, we see the mystic utilizing the cutting-edge metaphor of the telegraph to establish an invisible protective connection with wayward teenagers.
Right.
Then by 1868, that supernatural reputation has manifested into a massive physical and administrative reality, with shrines built and letters of devotion just flooding in.
Then jump to 1876, and we find him in the weeds of that administration, proving that true vision requires microscopic attention to detail balancing a print run of 300 pamphlets with a missionary expansion across the Atlantic.
And finally, in 1884, we see all that architecture put to the ultimate test during the cholera epidemic. The manager protects the many by sending them home, while the spiritual father risks absolutely everything to stay with the few who remain.
It just demonstrates that historical impact of this magnitude is never an accident, and it is never just one thing.
Right.
It is the friction of holding opposing forces together. You cannot just be a visionary who ignores the pamphlets, and you cannot just be an administrator who ignores the soul.
So true. But before we wrap up today, I want to go all the way back to the beginning of our timeline. I keep thinking about that word choice in 1862.
The telegraph.
The telegraph. Don Bosco deliberately co-opted the most advanced, disruptive communication technology of his era to explain a spiritual reality to his students. He used the tech of the day to make the invisible concept of omnipresence tangible.
It's a fascinating rhetorical strategy, and, it begs a rather provocative question about how we communicate today.
Exactly. Think about this. If a truly visionary leader emerged tomorrow, possessing that same level of deep supernatural intuition about the people under their care, what modern technology would they use as their metaphor?
Man, that's a heavy thought. If they needed to explain to a modern teenager that they are entirely known, deeply understood, and constantly being watched over, what is the modern equivalent of the telegraph in that context?
Right. Would they compare their insight to a predictive algorithm, to a cloud network?
And maybe the more uncomfortable question is, given our current relationship with technology, surveillance, and data privacy, how would society even react to a spiritual leader making that claim today?
Oof. Yeah, because in 1862, a spiritual telegraph was a safety net. Today, a spiritual algorithm might sound like a dystopia.
It really highlights how much our perception of being watched has shifted, from a concept of pastoral care to one of corporate or state surveillance.
It definitely gives you something to chew on the next time you clear your browser history.
Yeah, no kidding.
But this whole journey just proves that when we try to force history into neat, comfortable little categories, we miss out on the brilliant, messy reality of how things actually get built. The paradox isn't a glitch in the historical record. The paradox is the point. Thanks for joining us on this Deep Dive. We'll catch you next time.